RPGaDay is a 31-day event of questions and answers about everything we like about role-playing games. But what goes into our appreciation of a role-playing game? And if, like me, you need to consider purchasing a role-playing game sight unseen without being able to pick it up in a store, where do you go to get a review, or at least a description of the game apart from or different from what the publisher is telling you, what the back of the book blurb implies? Today is day 10 of RPGaDay, and the question is, where do you go for RPG reviews? Well, for me, I look at a couple of different places. I mean, these days, I'm old enough and have been doing this long enough that I'm usually pretty sure about whether or not I want to buy a game or not. But when I don't get enough information, when I can't tell enough about the game, well, at that point, I need some help. And really, that's what things like RPGaDay are all about, or other online gaming communities, sharing the information. So I start out by going to the publisher's website, and I look for whatever reviews have been linked there. Often these are the most positive reviews, but sometimes they're very, very negative and put up in a sense of, really, is our game this bad? Reading those reviews in that context can help me understand the fan base and maybe for whom the game ultimately was made. That helps me assess whether or not I'm in that group or not, or if my tastes overlap with theirs, because ultimately whether or not I like a game is really a matter of taste or preference. Once I've done that, then I usually head over to RPGNet. There are a lot of reviews there, and usually you can get reasonable information about the system, and you're unlikely to get that much information at most other reviews out there. Then, if I'm thinking about buying it physically, I might check on a site like Amazon to see if there have been complaints about the physical book. If I'm going to find them, I'll probably find them there. And if someone has bothered enough to put a review on a site like Amazon, I know it's fairly serious. Then I can assess whether or not I want to get involved. So, once I've done all of that, I'm usually fairly or even very certain that I know where I'll stand when I get the game. But then I like to do something for fun. I like to go to reviews from Runeslinger, where Matthew Pook does his reviews. I think he is among the best RPG reviewers out there right now, maybe the best. And while I don't always agree with all of his opinions, I know how my opinion compares to his opinion. And so often I find reading one of his reviews is exactly the same as me being in a store and being able to look at the game myself. And that is extremely valuable. So, reviews. Extremely valuable, I find, especially for those of us who live far, far away from anything resembling a game store. And giving an honest and detailed review is really a service that we offer to our fellow gamers out there. Something beyond gushing over how cool it looks or how excited you are to have it, but really breaking the game down, making solid comparisons to games that came before or games that you've had experience with. How the game actually plays is handy, how much of the book is dedicated to material, how much to art, how much to blank pages, and so on. If there's a significant difference between the print and the PDF, how useful the PDF or how functional the PDF is, and so on and so forth. Sharing that kind of information helps spread games, helps break down the barriers to trying something new, helps establish connections, especially when you can form friendships over games that you like in common that you're finding few people understand or are interested in or have yet to try. There's a lot of cool games out there, and by a lot I mean thousands upon thousands of games out there, many of which people have never heard of, let alone seen and held. putting reviews out there, letting them persist and exist without deletion and disappearance, is of extreme value to the role-playing game community, I believe. And maybe that in some way is where this question comes from. So, for you, the listener, where do you go for your RPG reviews? To whom do you turn to ask questions, or at least read their written reports on gameplay, system, questions that they had when trying to get into the game themselves, and issues that they may or may not have had when ordering the book or dealing with, those random or unexpected print problems that can crop up from time to time. So, for day 10, this was our response, at least, to the question of where do you go for RPG reviews. Coming up for day 11 is kind of a fun question, I hope, at least. Question 11 asks us, what dead game do we hope to see revived in the future? And by dead game, we're talking about one that's long out of print, that it's difficult to get a hold of in any way decent condition, even when you go to resellers such as Wayne's Books or Noble Knight, that sort of thing, that you're unlikely to find in a half-price books or whatever used bookstore you might have access to. What dead game would you like to see revived? Over the last couple of years, we've been lucky to see quite a few old games come back to life. We've seen the rebirth of the D6 system through Nocturnal. We have seen the return of Torg, and who knows what's next. And so, for day 10, this concludes our response. Thank you very much for listening. Remember that RPGaDay has been sponsored this year by the RPG Brigade, was created by Autocratic. The infographic was designed by Will Brooks, and our collation and collection service on RPGaday.com was provided for us by Glenn Welzer.